Look at this crazy dude. That's a Canadian, but he's not a salty Canadian. That's me. Hi, I'm Edwin. I'm going to be teaching you Pebble development. Alright guys, so here we are again with our code. Please be in our Cloud Pebble project. And if you remember from last time, we added an image and some text, and I hope you guys played around with it a little bit. Looked at some more of the text functions, looked at some more of the bitmap layer functions. So what we're going to be doing today is making another window, and inside of that window we're going to use what's called a menu layer. And a menu layer is a really powerful menu on Pebble. This image is black and white, but they do a lot. So it's simply, to put it simply, it's a list that is scrollable up and down, and you can have section headers, you can have items in the list with an icon on the left, you can have titles, you can have subtitles, you can have just title. It's really powerful. You can change on colored watches, you can change like different colors on it. You can have a ton of items in your list. You can have a bunch of different sections. So what we're going to be doing with our weather app is using a menu layer to display the cities in the main section of the menu, and then we're going to have a section below that is an add city button. So you can scroll down, you can click add city, and in a later tutorial we'll add the ability to add a city to that list of cities' weather. So you'll be able to list like New York, Vancouver, Zurich, Guelph, whatever sort of cities you want to list. Okay, so let's jump right into it. We're going to start by creating two new files. So we're going to click the Add New button on the Source Files section. We're going to use C file again, and we're going to name this one main window.c. Leave it as app/watchface as a target, and click Create Header, please. Then click Create, and it should leave you up and running with those two new files. So we're going to start right off by including our main window.h file inside of our main.c file, just so we don't have to worry about that in the future. And then we're going to actually just take a little bit of shortcut here. We're going to copy everything inside of the splash window.c, paste it inside of the main window.c. All right, come back to that in a second. Copy everything inside of the splash window.h, paste it inside of the main window.h, and save that. And now we're just going to do a little bit of editing so that it's not splash window and instead it's main window. Okay, so I want you guys to get rid of everything except the window. So get rid of the gbitmap, bitmap layer, and text layer. Leave the splash window. Get rid of everything inside of the functions. Okay, we're just making this a sort of template. Okay, so that should be clean. We can actually leave the create function. Okay, you can leave the create, destroy, and return function because now we're going to be changing just the name. So change the window's name to main window, right? And then put main window wherever there was a splash window before. So in these few spots. And then change anything that says splash to main, okay? So type main here, main window unload. We're going to type them for our window handlers. Okay, I'm going to change it here. Okay, I think I've gotten rid of alt traces. And up here, make sure to change your header file to main window.h, not splash window.h. Okay, save that. Now we're going to go to our main window.h and just quickly change these as well. Change these to main. Main window, get window. Okay, now that should be all good. I'm going to click run just to make sure I don't have any errors before we move on. You should do the same. Make sure you didn't leave any splashes anywhere. Oh, yeah, see. So we got a build failed. Yeah, okay, multiple definition of splash window create. So this is a great thing about Cloud Pebble. Small lesson here, guys. These source links link you directly to where the error is. So it's usually the first or the second one. So we're going to click the first one, splash window.c. This is where the first splash window is create. We want to leave this one. And then it said it was in number 14. Oh, yeah, okay, that was completely my bad. Perfect. And it even said line 14. So if you clicked that second link, it would have brought you right here. You would have known. And recompile, make sure you're all good. And that's why we test things. Okay, so this app's still the same, but we have our main window template set up. So now what we're gonna do with our main window is put some data inside of it. So I have a link for you guys in the description. It's a paste bin, and I want you to copy all of the functions from the paste bin and put them above this main window.load. I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, so I've got my paste bin here. I'm gonna copy all of this. I'm gonna paste it right above my main window load. We're gonna click save. And those are our MenuLayer callbacks. So we're gonna cover all of those in 1 second. Before we do that, we're gonna type MenuLayer. We're gonna set our MenuLayer here. MenuLayer, main MenuLayer. Okay. And then now that we have that, let's call our setup MenuLayer inside of our main window load. We're going to pass in our window, and in our main window unload, we're going to call MenuLayer destroy. And we really wish I had code completion right now. Okay. So now that we have that set up, we also want to create our main window inside of our main.c file. So we're going to go here, main window create. We'll put that below splash. Okay, now we have that set up. I'm going to click run again and make sure that I have no errors. Actually, I will have an error because this needs to return something. We're just going to return 0 for now, and we're going to cover it in a minute. Cross your fingers. Okay, failed again. My streak is going downhill, guys. Bounds. Oh, yeah. Okay, I got you, fam. So this is just asking you for the bounds. We're going to put our classic 00144, 168. That's going to be engraved in the back of your minds by the time we're done this series. And our window layer is just what we did yesterday. We had a layer called window layer equal to window get root layer and window. And in the paste bin that will be in the description, that will have those so you won't have those errors. That was my bad. Okay, we're successful. Perfect. So now we have a bunch of new functions here, and I know this looks really scary. This is a lot of code right here, especially if you're new to programming. But don't worry, I'm going to cover everything with you. So a MenuLayer is callback based, and there's a simpler version of MenuLayer called Simple MenuLayer. If you want to check this out, I wouldn't recommend this at all for the tutorial we're doing, since we're going to be making dynamic lists that change. But this is great for static lists. So if you know, for example, you're going to have 5 items in your list, use a simple MenuLayer. It's just much easier. You don't have all these callbacks. You don't have all the complications. It's just simple, to put it simple. And then here is our actual MenuLayer with our 6 callbacks that we've set up. And first, I'm going to cover this setup MenuLayer function. So just to simplify the window load function so it doesn't get too complicated, I've made this a separate function. So what it does is gets the root layer of the window, creates the MenuLayer with this frame, our classic 144, 168, and then it sets the callbacks of this MenuLayer. And just like we did window set window handlers, this is MenuLayer set callbacks. It's for setting the MenuLayer callbacks. If you want to set more, I think there are a few more you can set, like click callbacks and whatnot. But these are the basic 6 that we're going to need for this tutorial. So get number sections. So this gets the amount of number of sections that are in the MenuLayer. So if you have, just one section, you're just going to return 1 with this function. If you have more, you're going to return more. Maybe you have dynamic sections. This rows returns the amount of rows that that section has. So if that function, this getNumRows function, is asked for the amount of rows in, for example, the second section, you have to return the amount of rows that the second section has. This getHeaderHeight, this is pretty standard. You usually return menu cell basic header height. This is a constant within the Pebble API, but sometimes you might want to customize this header height, and if you do, you can just return a different value. DrawHeader draws the text on the header, or draws whatever you want to draw on the G context, which we're going to cover. DrawRow does the same thing, but it draws on the row. And selectClick, this happens when the user clicks select on one of the row items. So it will return to you the section that they clicked in and the row of that section they clicked on. So you'll be able to, for example, pull data from an array, change your output depending on which one they clicked, open a different window, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be making sure that they're either clicking a city or they're clicking the add button. Okay, so now that we've covered that, let's go into the actual functions and we'll look at their parameters. So the menu get num sections callback, its first parameter is a MenuLayer, and I'm not going to say that again because each one starts with the MenuLayer for these three. And then it has this data, and inside the data is the actual MenuLayer pointer reference if you set a context onto that MenuLayer. So this void data, if you're new to C specifically, this might be confusing for you because how can you have a void pointer? If you're curious, just to explain it quick, it's essentially a dynamic pointer, so you can pass any pointer structure into this, so you can pass like a MenuLayer and whatnot. We're not going to be using this right now. It's used in apps to pass data that's specific to the application around. Pebble will actually pass you null if you provide them with null in your set callbacks, and that's sort of what I skipped over here. Here we're actually passing a null pointer. We're passing something that doesn't exist, and then here it will pass us back null. But let's say we initialize the pointer and we pass the pointer into here, then we would get that pointer right here. We could cast it to whatever the structure was, and we would be able to use that data. But don't worry about it for now, and each function has that, so I'm not going to cover that anymore. So the menu get rows callback has a section index. So this is asking you for the amount of rows in whatever this section is. It's a 16-bit integer, and you can just use this in a switch, which I will cover once we're done covering these functions. Then menu get header height callback. This gives you the section index again, and you often just return this basic header height. Again, you're probably not going to want to change this, but if you want to try messing around with this, that would be cool. Draw header callback passes you two new things. Well, one new thing, sort of. You have a G context. So this is the context of the graphics that you're drawing on. So you're going to be actually using the CTX variable in the function to draw your headers, and in later functions draw your rows. And then this layer called cell layer is the actual layer that you're drawing on. This section index is the section that you're going to be drawing that header for. The menu draw row callback. This starts with a G context again. The cell layer that pertains to that row that you're going to be drawing on, and it passes you this menu index pointer. And what the menu index is a structure that contains two members that we're going to be using at least. It has a section member, and you can see the actual row that you're on. So you'll be able to see the specific section and the row, and we will be using both of those pieces of data to draw on our row. This select callback, we're going to come back in a later tutorial, but what it allows you to do is detect when somebody clicks on the menu layer. So if somebody clicks on one of your rows, this will be called, and it will pass you again this menu index pointer, and you'll be able to use this pointer to detect exactly where they clicked and change your function depending on that. Whew, okay, take a deep breath. Just covered all of that new content. If you're confused at all by my video, Feel free to rewind, pause wherever you need, write stuff down. I'd also recommend looking at the Pebble developer documentation on developer.getpebble.com. They have really well written out documentation. Oftentimes that makes more sense to me than what people might have written on a forum or in their own version of an online tutorial. So yeah, if my tutorials sometimes don't work for you, please feel free to look around, understand the concepts, understand what's going into these functions here and how to use them. Okay, great. So now we're actually going to implement the code that goes inside of all of these functions. So I said that I wanted to have two sections. I want one section for the cities that we're going to be listing, and I want one section for the Add City button. So what we're going to be doing here is going to be returning a different number for the amount of sections. So instead of 0, let's return 2. And for the amount of rows, this again changes on the section index. And this is where I'm going to introduce you to what's called a switch. If you've never used one before, for example, if you're new to programming, you might have not used a switch because I have also not covered it in my Intro to Programming tutorial series, if you watch that. So a switch is pretty easy to use. What a switch allows you to do is input a number, and you can have cases, so like sort of different scenarios, cases, for each number. So we're gonna type switch and then brackets, and inside of these parentheses, we're gonna type our section index variable. Okay, and then put your squiggly brackets, hit enter, and we're gonna type our first case of 0. And then a colon goes after that. And then hit enter, put a little tab, and hit break. Type break, sorry. Okay, now inside of this, in between the case 0 and the break is where the magic happens. This is where we're actually going to be returning something. We'll come back to why we can get rid of this later. But for now, if you wanted to use a switch to, execute something depending on a number without having to type a bunch of if, else if, else if, else if, else if statements, then you would just type this, case 0, and then you could do like, case 42, and then you could do like, case 420 and break and do whatever you want inside of this. And yeah, so we're going to be using this for our sections. And inside of the case 0, the first amount of rows we're going to have is 1. We're just going to start with 1 just for the example tutorial. But later on, you're actually going to be changing this number depending on how many cities that you have added. Okay? But for now, let's just type 1. So now, let's get rid of this break statement. But why would we get rid of it? Well, if you're new to programming, the return actually just stops here, okay? Like, if you didn't get that before, the return just kills the function. Nothing will happen below this. It is guaranteed to not happen below this unless you call the function again and this statement is not called, for example. So we're going to delete the break because what the break does is stop this switch from executing so that if you didn't have this here and you didn't have a return statement, right, and you did something here in the case, and then you had another case below it, and you didn't have a break or return, then whatever's in this next case is going to be executed. And we don't want that. Crap. Okay, my bad. I hope we didn't lose our stuff there. Okay, we completely lost everything we did there, but I'm going to quickly retype it. So yeah, that's a switch statement for you. So we're going to pass in the section index again. I don't even know why they have the delete key as a friggin' backspace. Like, it just does not make any sense. I never use it. It just frustrates me. Okay. And then we're going to have our second case, so our second row. Oh, sorry. We're going to have 2 sections, actually. I got a little confused here. We're going to have 2 sections, and then our case 1 will return 1 as well, because we're just going to have one Add City button. And then, otherwise, this is one last thing of a switch. you can have what's called a default. So if those cases above do not get executed, whatever's in the default statement gets executed. So we're just going to return 0 by default, just in case anything ever goes wrong. But we can trust right now, since we've typed 2 in here, that this will probably never be called.